Far away in a quiet part of the galaxy, the planet Rova was in trouble. For years, the Rovans had lived peacefully on their green world. Their cities were filled with tall buildings that shine under the warm sun. The people of Rova loved their homes, their families, and their quiet lives. But now, everything was changing fast. One evening, as the twin suns of Rova began to set, the planet's leaders gathered in their council chamber. The room was large and filled with soft lights. They spoke quickly, their faces full of worry. A dark shadow had appeared at the edge of their system. A powerful enemy fleet was moving toward Rova. This enemy was known for destruction and had taken over many other worlds before. Rova had no strong army to fight back. The council sent out a distress signal. It was a call for help, sent far across space to any who might hear. The message was simple but urgent. Rova under attack. Need aid. Please respond. The signal traveled through the stars, hoping to find a friend. Many ships passed by the message. But one group listened carefully. They were the Deathworlders, a human fleet known for being tough and fearless. The name Deathworlders came from their home planets. These worlds were harsh and dangerous places where only the strongest could survive. Because of this, the humans had learned how to live in tough conditions and fight when needed. Commander Nora stood on the bridge of the lead ship in the Deathworld fleet. She was calm but serious as she watched the stars through the large window. When the distress signal from Rova arrived, she felt a strong sense of duty. The message was clear. A planet was in danger and needed help. Nora knew her fleet had the skill to make a difference. Commander, the distress signal is coming from Rova, her communications officer said. They say their world is under attack. They need immediate assistance. Nora nodded. Prepare the fleet to move at full speed. We cannot let them face this threat alone. Her crew worked quickly. The ships, large and powerful, began to change course. Engines roared as they left their patrol routes and headed toward the distant planet. The Deathworlders were ready to face danger. No matter what. As they traveled through space, Nora thought about the people on Rova. She wondered what kind of lives they lived. Would they be able to fight alongside the Deathworlders, or would they need to be saved completely? The unknown made her alert and careful. When the fleet was close to Rova, Nora ordered the ships to scan the planet. The sensors showed smoke rising. From many places, cities were damaged and small fires burned across the landscape. Enemy ships blocked the skies, keeping the Rovans trapped. Nora's heart tightened. The situation was worse than she expected. She called her officers together to plan. We can't waste time, Nora said. The enemy is strong, but they don't know what they face. Our strength is our ability to survive and adapt. We will help Rova fight back. Lieutenant Aaron, the fleet's tactical officer, spoke up. Commander, our ships are built for tough fights. The enemy's technology is advanced, but they rely on their machines too much. Our soldiers are trained to think on their feet. Nora smiled slightly. Good. We will use that to our advantage. The Deathworlders began their approach to the planet. On Rova, the people watched the stars, hoping that the help they had called for was on its way. The Rovans were not warriors. Their culture valued peace and learning. Many had never held a weapon or prepared for war, but the threat forced them to change. In the cities, families hid in shelters while scouts and guards tried to defend their homes. The enemy ships fired from above, destroying buildings and cutting off supplies. Fear was strong, but so was hope. The Rovans believed that help was coming. Commander Nora's fleet arrived just as the enemy launched a heavy attack on one of Rova's largest cities. The Deathworlders moved quickly. Their ships formed a protective ring around the city, firing back at the invaders. The sound of lasers and explosions filled the sky. On the ground, Sergeant Ben led a group of Deathworld soldiers. Ben was a man who had grown up on a desert world where life was harsh. His skin was tough from years under the sun, and his eyes were sharp. He knew how to survive in the worst conditions and fight for what mattered. Ben and his team moved through the city streets, protecting Rovan civilians and fighting off enemy soldiers who had landed. The enemy was fierce, but not used to fighting people who would not give up. Ben's team worked hard to save as many lives as possible. Back on the lead ship, Nora watched the battle unfold on the screens. She could see the hope returning to the faces of the Rovens. The arrival of the Deathworlders had changed everything. The enemy ships began to pull back. Surprised by the sudden resistance, Nora knew this was only the beginning. The real fight was coming, but the first step was clear. The Deathworlders had answered the call for aid, and Rova was not a lone dot as the stars shone brightly above. Commander Nora made a silent promise. Wherever danger threatened the innocent, the Deathworlders would be there. The galaxy might be full of darkness, but the spirit of those who fight for survival and hope would never die. The Deathworlders' fleet moved slowly through the dark sky above Rova. The air was thick with smoke and dust from burning cities. Commander Nora watched carefully from the bridge of her ship. She could see the destruction below. Buildings once shining now lay in ruins. Fires burned bright against the darkened land. It was clear the enemy had done much damage. Nora felt a deep sadness for the Rovens. They were not fighters by nature, but they were strong in their own way. Their peaceful lives had been shattered, and now they needed help more than ever. Nora knew the Deathworlders could not fail them. The enemy fleet still hovered near the planet, blocking the sky like dark clouds. Their ships were large and menacing, covered with weapons and shields. They had already forced the Rovens into hiding. The Rovens' hope depended on the humans. Nora turned to her officers. We must act quickly. Our priority is to protect the civilians and push the enemy away. We cannot allow more damage. Lieutenant Aaron nodded. Our ships are ready, Commander. We can form a strong defense line and then move to attack. The Deathworlders moved into position, creating a barrier between the enemy ships and the planet's surface. The enemy fired first, powerful beams of energy cutting through the sky. The Deathworlders responded with equal force, their weapons blazing bright. Explosions lit up space as ships clashed in fierce battle. The sounds of combat echoed across the void, a reminder that war had come to a world that once knew peace. On the ground, the Rovens watched the sky with wide eyes. Many had never seen such a battle before. Children clung to their parents, and elders prayed for safety. Despite their fear, they felt a spark of hope. Help had arrived. Sergeant Ben moved carefully through the city streets with his team. The battle in the sky made it harder for the enemy to control the ground. Ben's soldiers used this chance to rescue trapped civilians and defend key points. Their armor was heavy, but they moved with strength and purpose. Ben stopped beside a group of Rovens huddled in a broken building. "Stay close," he said kindly. "We are here to help. You are safe now." A young Roven woman, Lena, looked up at Ben with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "We have never had help like this before." Ben smiled gently. "You're not alone anymore." Back in space, Nora received new reports from her scouts. The enemy fleet was regrouping and preparing for a bigger attack. The enemy commander was not ready to give up Rova so easily. Nora knew the fight would get harder. "We need to find the enemy's weak points," Nora said to Aaron. "If we can disrupt their command, we might turn the battle." Aaron studied the data carefully. "Their ships are linked by a network. If we can break the connection, their coordination will fail." Nora nodded. "Prepare a strike team. We will target the enemy's command ship." The Deathworlders sent a small group of fast fighters to attack the command ship. The pilots were skilled and brave. They flew through enemy fire, dodging beams and missiles. The battle was dangerous, but the Deathworlders were determined. Inside the command ship, the enemy leader watched the attack with growing anger. His face was cold and hard, but he knew the Deathworlders were a serious threat. He ordered his ships to focus fire on the incoming fighters. The fighters moved quickly, firing powerful weapons. They hit the command ship's systems, causing sparks and alarms. The enemy's network began to fail. Without their strong connection, the enemy ships became confused. Nora smiled as the news came in. "They are losing control. This is our chance," she ordered the fleet to push forward. The Deathworlders' ships surged ahead, driving the enemy away from Rova's surface. The sky began to clear, and the fires below could be seen burning less fiercely. on the ground. Ben's team fought hard to protect the last groups of trapped civilians. They moved through ruins and rubble, finding people in shelters and helping them to safety. The Rovens looked at the Deathworlders with gratitude and respect. Lena joined Ben's group, offering help as best she could. "We want to help you," she said. "We want to learn how to defend ourselves." Ben looked at her and nodded. "We will teach you. Together, we can protect your home." The city was still damaged, but the people were alive. The enemy had been pushed back for now, and hope returned to the hearts of the Rovans. In the days that followed, Nora and her officers worked with Rovan leaders. They planned how to defend the planet better. The Deathworlders shared their knowledge about fighting and surviving. The Rovans listened and learned quickly. Nora saw the change in the Rovans. Fear turned to courage. Doubt turned to determination. The peaceful people began to understand what it meant to stand and fight. One evening, Nora stood outside her ship, looking at the stars. She thought about the long journey ahead. The enemy would return, stronger than before, but so would the Deathworlders. She knew the battle for Rova was not just about weapons and ships. It was about hope, unity, and the will to survive. The Deathworlders had arrived at a world that needed more than just fighters. It needed friends. As the twin suns set over Rova once more, a new feeling spread across the planet. It was the feeling of strength, the strength to fight for a future. The morning sun rose over the planet Rova, shining through smoky skies. The cities were still damaged from the enemy's attack, but the people were not giving up. The arrival of the Deathworlders had brought new hope. Now it was time to fight back. Commander Nora stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the planet below. The enemy fleet had returned, stronger and more prepared. This time, the battle would be bigger and fiercer. Nora knew her fleet and the Rovans would face a great challenge. Enemy ships are moving toward the southern coast. Lieutenant Aaron reported. They have brought more fighters and heavy weapons. Nora's face grew serious. Prepare the fleet for battle formation. We must protect the cities and civilians. This is our chance to show the enemy what we are made of. Below, Sergeant Ben and his team moved quickly through the city streets. The Rovans had begun training under the Deathworlders' guidance. They learned how to use simple weapons, how to find cover, and how to help each other in battle. The soldiers were not used to fighting, but their determination was strong. Ben stopped for a moment and looked around. "Stay close," he told a group of new Rovan fighters. "We fight as one. Trust each other and never give up." The new fighters nodded nervously but followed his lead. Ben could see the fear in their eyes, but also the courage growing. The enemy ships moved closer to the planet, dark shadows against the sky. They began their attack with a heavy bombardment. Lasers and missiles rained down on the cities, causing explosions and shaking the ground. Nora gave the order. "Return fire. Protect the civilians at all costs." The Deathworlders' ships responded with powerful blasts. Their weapons were strong and accurate. The enemy was surprised by the fierce defense. On the ground, the battle was even more intense. Ben and his team fought side by side with the Rovans. The new fighters used the training they had learned, finding cover behind ruins and returning fire when they could. The enemy soldiers were well trained and armed with advanced weapons, but they did not expect the determination of the Deathworlders and Rovans working together. Every time the enemy moved forward, they were pushed back. Ben led a small group on a mission to take control of a key communication tower. The tower was important for the enemy's coordination. If they lost it, the enemy would have trouble sending orders. The streets were dangerous. Enemy patrols moved quickly, searching for any resistance. Ben and his team used their knowledge of the city to avoid detection. They moved silently through alleys and broken buildings. As they reached the tower, they saw enemy guards standing watch. Ben signaled his team. They prepared to attack. With careful precision, they took down the guards one by one. The sound of the fight was sharp and quick. Soon, the tower was theirs. Ben quickly set up equipment to block enemy signals. He sent a message to Commander Nora. "Tower secure. Jamming enemy communications. Nora smiled when she received the message. Good work, Sergeant. This will help us turn the tide. Back in space. The enemy fleet began to lose coordination. Without clear orders, their attacks became less effective. The Deathworlders took advantage of this. They moved their ships to cut off enemy reinforcements and protect key areas. The battle lasted for hours. The sky was filled with flashes of light and thunderous sounds. The people of Rova watched, some from hiding places, others brave enough to stand and watch the fight. Lena, the young Rovan woman who had helped Ben before, stood with her family. She felt a mixture of fear and pride. The Deathworlders were fighting hard, and the Rovans were no longer alone. As night fell, the enemy began to retreat. Their ships withdrew from the planet's orbit, disappearing into the darkness of space. Nora let out a breath she did not know she was holding. We have won this battle, she said. But the war is not over. On the ground, Ben gathered his team. We did well today, he told them. But we must be ready. They will come back. Stronger. The Rovans around him nodded. They were tired and scared, but they were learning to fight. Together, they had shown the enemy that Rova would not fall easily. That night, Nora and her officers met with Rovan leaders. They discussed plans to rebuild defenses and train more fighters. The alliance between the Deathworlders and Rovans was growing stronger. Nora looked around the room. She saw hope in the eyes of the Rovans. They were beginning to believe they could protect their world. As she prepared to rest, Nora thought about the long road ahead. The enemy was powerful, but so was the spirit of those who stood to defend their home. The first clash had tested them all. It had shown both strength and courage, and it had made one thing clear: Rova and the Deathworlders would fight together until the end. The battle for Rova had slowed, but the danger was far from over. Commander Nora and her team knew the enemy would not stop. They had to find new ways to fight and protect the planet. The Deathworlders had strength, but the enemy had numbers and technology. It was time to learn the enemy's secrets. Inside the command ship, Nora gathered her officers for a meeting. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Everyone was tired but focused. We fought hard, but we need more than strength, Nora said. We need to understand how the enemy fights and find their weaknesses. Lieutenant Aaron nodded. Our sensors have collected data on their ships and weapons, but their energy systems are complex. Engineer Mira, a skilled technician, spoke up. I've been studying their energy patterns. Their weapons use a steady pulse of power. If we can disrupt that pulse, we can weaken their attacks. Nora looked at Mira with hope. Can you build something to do that? Mira smiled. I believe so. It will take time and resources, but it could change the battle. Nora agreed. Do whatever you need. We must be ready for the next attack. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Sergeant Ben was training the Rovan fighters. They were eager to learn, but fear still lingered. Ben knew they had to be prepared not just to fight but to survive. He took a small group to the edge of the city. The area was rough and wild, filled with rocky hills and thick forests. Ben wanted to teach them how to use the land to their advantage. Listen carefully, Ben said. On Deathworlds, we learn to survive in places that seem impossible. You can use the environment to hide, to move quietly, and to find food and water. The enemy won't expect you there. The Rovans watched and listened. They practiced moving through the forest without making noise. They learned to find safe places to rest and how to stay hidden from enemy patrols. Lena, the young Rovan woman who had joined Ben's team, asked, "How did you survive on your harsh world?" Ben smiled softly. We didn't have a choice. We learned to adapt or we didn't survive. That is the key. If you can change with the land, you can survive anything. Back in space, Engineer Mira worked late into the night. She and her team built a device to disrupt the enemy's energy pulses. It was small but powerful, designed to be launched from their ships during battle. When it was ready, Mira demonstrated it for Commander Nora and the officers. The device sent out a burst of energy that made enemy weapons flicker and lose power. For a few moments, Nora's eyes brightened. This will give us an edge. The next day, the enemy fleet returned. This time, their ships moved with confidence, expecting an easy victory. But the Deathworlders were ready. During the battle, Nora ordered the launch of Mira's new device. It flew into the heart of the enemy fleet and released its pulse suddenly. The enemy weapon stuttered and went silent for seconds that felt like hours. The Deathworlders took advantage immediately. Their ships fired with precision, pushing the enemy back. The skies above Rova lit up with the energy of battle, but the tide had turned on the ground. Ben and the Rovan fighters used what they had learned about the land. They moved through forests and hills, surprising enemy patrols. They attacked where the enemy least expected and disappeared before the enemy could fight back. Lena found herself becoming stronger and braver with each day. The fear that had filled her heart was replaced with a fierce determination. She was learning to fight for her home. One evening, Ben gathered his team around a small fire in the forest. "You have all done well," he said. "But remember, survival is more than fighting. It is about patience, about knowing when to move and when to wait." A young Rovan fighter raised a hand. "What if the enemy returns with more ships?" Ben looked at her and smiled. "Then we will be ready. We will fight smarter and harder. Because we know the land and we know each other." Commander Nora watched the battle from her ship. She felt a growing respect for the Rovans and her own people. Together, they were learning to survive and to win. The secret of the Deathworlders was not just their weapons. It was their spirit, the will to keep going, no matter what, to adapt and to fight for every inch of ground. The enemy might have power, but the Deathworlders and Rovans had something stronger, hope. And hope was a force that could never be destroyed. The quiet that followed the recent battles was only temporary. Commander Nora knew the enemy was preparing for something bigger. Their attacks were becoming more focused and dangerous. The Deathworlders and Rovans had won small victories, but now they faced a new threat from within. On Rova, trust was fragile. The peaceful people were not used to war, and fear made them unsure of each other. Rumors began to spread. Some said there were spies working for the enemy inside their cities. Others whispered that some leaders might be hiding secrets. Nora was troubled when her intelligence team reported strange signals coming from inside Rova. These signals were weak but steady, and they matched enemy codes. "We must find the source," Nora told Lieutenant Aaron. "If there are traitors, we cannot let them destroy everything we have built." Aaron nodded. "We will begin a search at once. The people need to feel safe." Meanwhile, Sergeant Ben was preparing his team for another patrol near the city's edge. Lena joined him, stronger and more confident after weeks of training. "Do you think there are spies here?" Lena asked quietly as they moved through the streets. Ben looked around carefully. "It's hard to say. War changes people. Sometimes fear makes us see threats where there are none. But we must stay alert." As they moved, Ben's team noticed signs of recent movement in the shadows, hidden messages, strange symbols carved into walls. They followed the clues with caution. At the same time, Nora met with the Roving Council. The leaders were worried and tired. They had lost many homes and friends. Now, they faced the danger of betrayal. "We must work together," Nora said firmly. "This planet is only safe if we trust each other. We cannot let fear break us." The council agreed to increase patrols and watch for suspicious behavior. They also promised to share any information openly. Days passed, and the search continued. Then, one night, Ben's team found a hidden bunker outside the city. Inside were enemy weapons and communication devices. More shocking was the discovery of a Rovan official speaking secretly with an enemy agent. Ben's heart sank. The official was someone many had trusted. The betrayal was deep and dangerous. He sent a message to Commander Nora. "We have found proof of traitors working with the enemy." Nora acted quickly. She ordered the arrest of the official and increased security around important places. The betrayal was a blow, but it also showed the importance of vigilance. The news spread fast. Some Rovans were angry and afraid. Others were confused. Lena felt a deep sadness. How could someone betray their own people? She asked Ben. Ben shook his head. Fear and greed can make people do terrible things, but most of us are strong. We will not let this destroy us." The enemy tried to use the betrayal to their advantage. They launched a surprise attack soon after, hoping the confusion would weaken the defense. But the Deathworlders and Rovens were ready. The stronger security and new strategies helped them hold the line in the heat of the battle. Nora saw her. People fight with courage. The threat from within had made them stronger, not weaker. After the fight, Nora met with Ben and Lena. "We have much work to do," she said, "but we will protect Rova, no matter the cost." Lena looked at Nora and nodded. "I will fight for my home and my people." Ben smiled. "And we will fight with you." The shadows of betrayal had tested them all, but the spirit of the Deathworlders and Rovens was unbroken. Together, they would face whatever came next. The skies over Rova darkened once more as the enemy fleet gathered strength for a new assault. Commander Nora stood on the bridge of her ship, eyes fixed on the approaching threat. The betrayal they had uncovered was a painful blow, but it had also made the Deathworlders and Rovens more vigilant and united. "This attack will be the fiercest yet," Lieutenant Aaron warned. "The enemy knows we are prepared. They will use everything they have." Nora nodded. "Then we must be ready to fight smarter and stronger. We cannot allow them to take Rova." On the ground, Sergeant Ben and Lena prepared the Rovan fighters. They had grown from frightened civilians into determined warriors. Their training had sharpened their skills, and their courage was tested every day. Ben gathered his team near the city's outer defenses. "Remember what we have learned. Use the land, trust each other, and never give up. We fight not just for survival, but for our future." Lena looked at the faces of the fighters. She saw hope and fear mixed together. "We will stand together," she said firmly, "and we will win." As the enemy fleet closed in, Nora ordered the fleet into a new formation. This time, they would not just defend. They would strike with precision and power. Engineer Mira's device to disrupt enemy energy pulses was ready for action. "This is our best chance," she told Nora. "If we can break their power, we can take control of the battle." Nora agreed. "Launch the device when the enemy is close." The battle began with thunderous energy. Enemy ships fired powerful weapons, but the Deathworlders' defenses held firm. The skies were filled with flashes of light and roaring engines. When the enemy was within range, the device was launched. It flew into the heart of the enemy fleet and sent out a powerful pulse. Enemy weapons flickered and shut down. Ships lost control and began to drift. The Deathworlders moved quickly. Their ships attacked with renewed strength, pushing the enemy back. The tide of battle was turning. On the ground, Ben and Lena led the Rovan fighters in a coordinated attack. They used the forest and hills to their advantage, surprising enemy ground forces. The enemy was confused and disorganized. Their retreat became a full withdrawal. Nora watched the retreat with relief and pride. "We have won a great victory today," she said, "but we must stay ready." Back on Rova, the people celebrated their survival and newfound strength. Lena stood with her family, feeling proud of how far they had come. Ben visited the families who had been helped by the soldiers. "This fight is not over," he told them, "but we are stronger together." Nora and her officers began planning the next steps. They knew the enemy would return. The war for Rova was far from finished, but for now, the Deathworlders and Rovens had won a turning point. They had proven that even against great odds, courage and unity could change the course of history. The war had tested them all. The people of Rova and the Deathworlders had faced fear, betrayal, and danger. Now, as the sun rose over the battle-scarred planet, hope filled the air. Commander Nora stood on the command ship's bridge, looking at the planet below. Cities were rebuilding. Fields once burned were slowly turning green. The people were healing. But they knew the peace was fragile. "We have held our ground," Nora said softly. "But the future depends on more than just fighting. It depends on trust, courage, and working together." Lieutenant Aaron approached with news. "Enemy communications are quiet. It seems they have retreated far." Nora nodded. "Good. Let them think twice before returning." On the ground, Sergeant Ben walked through the streets with Lena. They saw families rebuilding homes and children playing again. The war had changed them all. But life continued. Lena smiled. I never thought I would feel this safe again. Ben looked at her and said, we fought hard to protect this. Now it's up to all of us to keep it safe. The Deathworlders had taught the Rovens many things, not just how to fight, but how to survive and work together. The bond between the two groups was strong. Nora met with Roven leaders in a council chamber. They spoke about rebuilding, sharing resources, and preparing for any future threats. One leader said, your people saved us. We are grateful. Nora replied, we are stronger because of you. Together, we protect this world. As weeks passed, the alliance grew deeper. The Deathworlders helped build schools, hospitals, and farms. The Rovens shared their knowledge of the land and their hopes for peace. Ben and Lena trained new fighters, teaching not only skills but the importance of unity. We fight for our families and our future, Ben told them. That is why we must stand together. The enemy had not returned, but the lessons of war stayed with everyone. The people of Rova knew they must always be ready. One evening, Nora stood with Lena on a hill overlooking the city. The stars shone bright above them. We have come far, Lena said quietly. Nora smiled. And we will go even further. This is only the beginning of a new chapter. Lena looked up at the sky. A new dawn for Rova. Nora nodded. Yes, a new dawn for all of us. The war had changed their world, but it had also brought hope. The Deathworlders and Rovens had found strength in each other. They had shown that even in the darkest times, courage, trust, and friendship could light the way. And so, the future began with a promise of peace and the will to protect it.